Here. Here. Okay, would you please join me in the salute of the flag? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Ridgewood Board of Education has been meeting in an executive session pursuant to NJSA 10:4-12. Minutes of the meeting will be released in the need for confidentiality that no longer exists. And pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act, advance notice of this evening's meeting has been given to the Ridgewood News, Record, and the Clerk of the Village of Ridgewood. In addition, notices have been posted in the office of the Board Secretary and in all the school buildings. Okay. This afternoon, we have Matt Lee from New Jersey School Boards, who's going to review our Board of Education self-eval. Join us.
So good evening, everyone.
Hi.
Good to see you all again. So as Dr. Fishbein mentioned, I'm here to review with you your board self-evaluation document. As you all know, this is a document that we compile at the New Jersey School Boards Association based on the input from the board. Board self-evaluations were at one time required by CUSAC. They no longer are, but it is certainly a best practice for high-performing boards to take a look at themselves and their operations once a year and figure out if there might be some ways that they might be able to tweak how they perform and move to the next level. So I'm here to review your document. You all have in front of you two documents. The first is a matrix document that looks very much like this, and the other is a set of graphs that depicts some of the standards that we'll review graphically. We'll get to the graph piece later. And we'll start with the self-evaluation document matrix. A couple of notes about this before we begin.
Matt?
Yes.
Why did they take it out of CUSAC?
I don't actually know. I do know that as they're reviewing and updating CUSAC requirements right now, my department has suggested that they might want to bring the board self-evaluation back within CUSAC. I don't know whether that will be adopted or not, but we certainly think it's a best practice for boards to look at this. Quick notes about the document. The first page on the document outlines 9 different facets of boardsmanship, and the ratings on that page reflect the board's impression of how valuable those are to board performance. And each of those are broken down on the inside into 2 different tables. The top table is a table that takes into account the opinions of all the board members, plus the business administrator and the superintendent. And the bottom piece, you'll see, has different totals on it, and that's because that's for board members only, and it's each board member being asked to rate themselves. Each section also has an area for comments beneath. You'll notice that the comments are separated by an asterisk, and each asterisk designates a new commenter. The rating scale on this document is a 0 to 4. Usually we're looking for at least a 3.0 to designate high performance. The average score for the Ridgewood Board of Education this time around is a 3.8, so that's fantastic. All right, now we're going to move through each of the areas very quickly, review each of the scores, and allow you all a few moments to read the comments beneath. The first area to examine is planning, and the score there is a 3.8. with 3.9s in 3 of the areas, 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, and all of these are seven people who voted.
Not on the bottom.
Not on the bottom.
Pardon me?
There's 7 up here, but 5.
Okay. Who's the seven on the top?
The board, me, and Alfredo.
Okay. So as you can see, there are a number of comments at the bottom of page 2 and spilling over a little bit onto page 3. So I'll give you a second to read each of those. Section 2, beginning on page 4, is where the board rates itself as a policymaking body. As you know, one of the board members' 4 main duties is creating policy for the administration to run the district. The score here for Ridgewood is 3.7, with a high of a 3.9 on number 4. And again, there are comments at the bottom of the page.
We did get this, so we have had an opportunity to read,
Okay.
just so you know.
All right. Is there a better way for me to go through this to make it?
No, just, I think
Okay.
she just, I got it in advance, so I sent it to them.
Okay. Section 3, student achievement. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult for board members to understand how they impact student achievement. Certainly not in classrooms day to day. There are things that the board does in terms of curriculum examination and approval, in the way it designates resources to help with student achievement, and the way it monitors and holds the administration accountable for student achievement certainly contributes to student achievement. A score there of 3.8 for the board, with 4s on number 4 and 6. Page 8, section 4 on finance. A score there of 3.8 with 4.0s on 4 and 1. One of the interesting things about this evaluation this year is that contrary to nearly every district I've ever gone to, the folks here feel very comfortable individually about how they understand the finances of the district. There's a perfect score of 4.0 there. Not very common. But congratulations to you and to your business administrator for making sure that you guys are all up to speed on how the finances of the district work.
Yeah, about every other year, we do a workshop on treasurer's reports or treasurer's reports, so everyone, because those can be very complicated. And they, the board also shares the responsibility of going through the bills at the PO level.
Right.
Before they go on the bills list.
Mhm.
So they all get to see where we spend the money.
That's excellent.
They love it.
Absolutely. It's very constructive.
Many years as a finance chair myself, I absolutely understand. Okay, section 5, page 10, board operations. This particular grid that includes the CSA and the business administrator happens to be split in 2 on this particular item. The score then for the board as a whole at the bottom of page 10 is a 3.7. And as you can see, the bottom section has to do with how the board organizes itself by committees. Section 6, page 12. This is a score for board performance. A 3.8 out of 4 for the board here, with 4s on section, or excuse me, item 2, item 3, and item 6. And as you all know, as being board members, those are some of the more critical items of acting responsibly as a board member, keeping confidentiality, and avoiding the appearance of impropriety through conflicts of interest. Section 7, board superintendent relationships. Again, the most critical relationship that you have as a school board member is with your superintendent. We often hear that Board of Educations have only one employee. Your employee is your superintendent. Everyone else works for the superintendent. So making sure that that communication line between the superintendent, the board, and the district is a good one, is vital. Score of 3.8 there. Section 8, board staff relationships. Again, sometimes this is a little bit of a difficult concept to understand because if executed properly, a board member really doesn't have a lot of direct contact with staff as a board member. But there are things that the board does to support the staff that are critical for high performance. Certainly making sure that there's professional development within the district, that the policies having to do with personnel are in place, and that actions are quickly communicated to the staff and properly communicated to the staff. And then finally, that the staff is recognized for its achievements. And section 9, board in the community. Of the 4 main duties of the Board of Education, communication is one of the vital ones. The board's position as the link between the administration and the public, and between the public and the administration, is a key responsibility. Ridgewood Board has a score of 3.7 there. And again, something unusual here. Often you see that the board, because they don't see a lot of people at meetings, tends to think that there's something wrong with their relationship with the community. I see you all understand with this perfect score of 4.0 as individuals that you do have a good relationship with the community and you are effectively operating in that area. Page 19 is an area where we ask the board for its verbatim comments about, in this case, the 3 major challenges facing the district. And I've gone through and analyzed them. They stretch from page 19 to page 20, or excuse me, to 21. No, yeah, to 21. And I've just kind of organized them into buckets. There's quite a bit here on finance, some on facilities as well, some challenges identified with testing and assessment, certainly state regulations, which is a very common theme, and special education pieces as well. And on page 21, again, another verbatim section. We asked the board, what are the areas that you might want to see more specific training or focus on as a board? And again, and divided these up into buckets. There's some about negotiations here, some about advocacy, board relationships, finance, and board's understanding of district operations. And again, each asterisk is a new commenter. So that is the actual matrix document, and I wanted to just draw your attention real quickly to the charts that we have. The first chart compares the board score, which was the top section of each of the different facets, to the value that the board placed on them on page 1. And what we tend to do here is to look for any significant gaps. We don't see any. Page 2 compares the board score to the individual score. Again, no significant gaps here. It's always interesting to see, though, where boards individually rate themselves versus the board score as a team. Which one? Yeah. So if you recall, as we went through each of the facets of the matrix document, there was a top score, and the top score was the board ranking itself as a body. And then the bottom score was each board member individually ranking themselves. And this just compares the two scores.
So we're all in a very tight range.
Yeah, there's nothing significant there. And then finally, this is a year-over-year comparison on chart number 3, comparing last year's score to this year's score. And again, there are no significant gaps there on policy, finance, board operations, and board superintendent relationships were basically exactly the same. And there's just slight differences in each of the other areas. So that is the results of your board self-evaluation. Often we recommend that this is a good starting point for both district and for board goals for the coming year. I'm not sure where you folks are at with setting those at this point, but these are good foundation documents to begin that process. So unless there are any questions.
You know, first of all, we have pretty good scores. I think you opportunity to look at many districts.
I do.
I would imagine that not all are as high as this.
That's quite true.
Is that an understatement?
Yes, this is amongst the highest that I've seen.
I also take pride, particularly on the community relationships.
Yep.
We have not had a contested election since 2012.
Wow.
So the community does, in fact, recognize that what the board is doing. At least I take it as such.
Absolutely. It's often said that, people only show up to your meeting when they've got a gripe.
That's true.
And I don't find that completely true, but sometimes it is a barometer of how well things are going, that, people trust that the district is being run well. And, it's causing them to focus on other things, right?
Yeah, the other thing I'd point out is that this past year was particularly difficult because we went well over a year without contract with our teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And in the process of settling that contract, there was a lot of tension, a lot of rancor, and a lot of anxiety, both between us and the teachers union, and even among ourselves. It's not easy to sit late at night, time after time, trying to hammer something out. Still have that high opinion of ourselves.
Yeah. It's one of the more difficult duties of a board member, I can tell you for sure. It's very hard to conduct that process without it becoming a personal thing to many people. And that's the toughest part, is to kind of keep that at arm's length when you're going through it and try to keep the emotions out of it. Not an easy task by any means. And certainly when they drag on and on and on, that becomes even more exacerbated. So to keep these good scores and to keep this good relationship with the community and the staff through that kind of a process is very commendable.
I think one thing that this board does very well is that we're out there in the community and we serve on various committees out in the community, working with our village, people in the village. And, I don't know if that's a common practice, but it certainly And when we're invited to go to programs at the schools, there's one or two board members who will go. Some of us work, some aren't available, but I think that demonstrates a real commitment to our schools, and to want to hear concerns. We can't always solve an issue, but we certainly, I think we try to listen.
Yeah, and that's really should be your main focus when you're in the community is, to listen, and, if there are things that need to be addressed operationally, that those get referred to the chain of command, and, in that case, you've done your duty as a board member. So, certainly visibility is key, and, demonstrating the interest in the community at large is also a big positive. So, I would commend you all on that as well. Any questions?
Thank you.
If you have anything you ever need, certainly give me a call. I'm on the website. And I know I've spoken to at least some of you over time, so hope to see you all in the future.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
for coming.
Thank you.
It's great to have early summer meetings, huh?
You too. This is such a nice thing.
Okay, at this time, we normally solicit comments from the public.
That'll be hard.
Seeing none,
Seeing no public,
Being no public, I suggest we move on to consent items.
all right, I'd like to present for consideration A, attendance at conferences, B, administration, C, curriculum with the changes or additions you see on that attachment, and D, human resources.
I move A, B, C, and D.
second it.
Any comments, questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
I'd like to present for consideration E, finance.
I move finance.
second it.
At this point, I would like to recognize a series of donations.
So generous. So generous.
We're off to a good start.
You truly have generous. A-Hold Financial Services for Stop and Shop A+ rewards, $473.26 to be used towards the purchase of a school mascot copy for RHS, Security Police mascot copy. What is a move?
I'm sure it'll be great.
RHS Band Association,
Like-
$11,722.40. Pay Emily Wong stipend for nursing services for the RHS Band camp. Ridgewood High School Association, $3,000 to purchase a sound system for the RHS Campus Center. $1,683.50 to be used for college visits for the NACAC and for expenses for the freshman focus room. And finally, $3,000 to be used for NACAC expenses. RHS Project Graduation 2016 contributed $7,594. Purchase furniture for the freshman focus room. The foundation contributed $21,500 to be used for the purchase science equipment and materials, grades 6 through 12, as part of the STEAM four-year proposal. An additional $5,000 to be used to help fund the 2017-18 Community Outreach Wellbeing Speaker Series. And finally, $20,000 to be used for the development of maker spaces at George Washington and Benjamin Franklin, also as part of the STEAM four-year proposal. And as I often say, as we mark on a generous contribution from the foundation that our board has graced, the two past presidents of that foundation.
The foundation, the grants the foundation is making here are part of a multi-year program to supporting STEM and maker spaces throughout the middle and high school.
We have from the Travel HSA, $5,850 to purchase teacher wish list items. And an additional $2,900 to pay for moving and resetting the bricks. We have a gift in kind from the RHS Girls Tennis, resistance fans valued at $309. And also an acceptance of a gift in kind from the RHS TV Club of memory cards, one headset, microphone, and belt pack valued at approximately $300. So we want to thank all of those generous people.
Definitely.
Vote. Vote.
Okay, and are there any questions?
Yes.
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 Yes. Now we move on to the approval of bills. This month, Sheila and I have the honor of reviewing all the bills. Sheila, do you want to go first?
Sure. I just want to say that the new process of reviewing the bills is very efficient, and I thank Joanne for setting it up so that it's an easy way to review the bills and see the documents without shuffling through a lot of papers. So I really do appreciate that. I'd like to move for approval June 30th, Columbia Bank Online's check number 084357 through 084399. July 6th, Columbia Bank Online's check number 084644 through 084725. And July 13th, Columbia Bank Online's checks number 084726 through 084774. July 14th, payroll transfer. July 10th and 13th, food service. And these were really for repairs, just so you know that we're not serving lunch in July. These were for repairs to equipment in our kitchen, so we'll be all up and running and ready for September. And July 30th, 12th, and 12th, those 4 voided checks.
Second.
I'll second.
And I'd like to move all of the items that you see on that list that are associated with my name.
I
in the
move.
amounts as indicated.
I move. I second it, sorry. Okay, out of practice. Yes.
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 Yes. Board member announcements.
I do have just a little bit of an update. I have an update. Just,
Legislative update?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
okay. Just a couple of stuff on New Jersey education leadership. Last week, Governor Christie announced that Kimberly Harrington was sworn in as the New Jersey Commissioner of Education after 9 months as acting commissioner. Since Governor Christie will be leaving office in January, Commissioner Harrington may have a short tenure in this position, where it is often the governor's choice to select his cabinet.
But it is good of the legislature to get around to approving it, because there are a bunch of other positions they just leave hanging in the acting place forever.
There's been a change of the State Board of Education. Arcelio Aponte was elected president of the New Jersey State Board of Education. He had been president a few years ago. And replacing Mark Vedron. Governor Christie did not reappoint Vedron to the State Board of Education, nor did he reappoint who was the vice president. So there is also a new vice president of the State Board of Education. The 2018 state budget included, the whole shutdown and everything, but it included $181 million more in school funding. Estimates are that more than 100 school districts will lose funding. For example, Jersey City, which will no longer be under state control, will lose an estimate of $8.4 million in state aid, and East Orange will lose as much as $3.1 million. 300 districts will receive additional state aid, and in estimates published by the New Jersey Office of Legislative Services, and that I don't think we've received it verification from the state yet, but the estimate for Ridgewood would receive would be $257,765 in additional state aid. As I said, this has not been confirmed by the Department of Education that I know of. Extraordinary aid payments are also slated to increase, with reimbursements for high special education costs increasing. And I believe that this year, last year, or the year before, it was reimbursed at about 54 or 55%. And I believe they're estimating that it should be, the reimbursement should be about 65%. So that's an increase. So if these are correct,
We should get an
then
increase.
we should receive both the increase in state aid and an increase in the extraordinary aid reimbursement.
Did they
And
say
just
where
on,
they're gonna actually get that money from?
pardon me?
Do they say where that money would
Well,
actually
like,
come from?
Jersey City will get a reduction of 8 million, so
That
that's,
Taking from some
distribution.
districts that are
Right. So
receiving
they
more than
are,
their fair share.
what they're saying is they're going to be following the
Funding
formula,
formula.
and the adjustment aid, some of the adjustment aid is decreased. But I'm sure that money's also coming from other areas, but I've not been able to find exactly where. All 120 seats in the New Jersey legislature, 80 in the New Jersey Assembly, and 40 in the Senate are up for election on November 7th. So although I went onto the legislative site, I see that there are scheduled meetings, but today's, for instance, were all canceled. So how much activity, although I've heard Senator Sweeney said we'll be working all through the summer. I don't know how often the legislature will be in Trenton this summer. And then come the fall, it will be more campaign driven, their activities, I'm sure. We should see both Assemblyman Dave Russo and Senator Kevin O'Toole are not seeking re-election. So we would see new faces representing District 40. And candidates for the Assembly are Christopher DePhillips and incumbent Kevin Rooney for the Republicans, and Paul Vagianos and Christine Ordway for the Democrats. And running for the Senate in District 40 are Christian Corando for a Republican, and Thomas Dutch, I think it is, D-U-C-H, Dutch. I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but for the Democrats.
That's it?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other board announcements? Okay, at this time, we once again solicit comments from the public. There are none, so let's move on. And I want to bring up for discussion, as I promised I would, the issue of a proposal in the Fields Committee policy. I've talked to each of you individually about this, so I think we're pretty much up to speed. Jeff Gluck, who is the village at-large representative, has been working on revising the policy. We met on June 22nd for a long meeting and went over the suggested revisions. Most of the revisions, there were some spirited discussions. There were some revisions which he hadn't anticipated, which were a result of that meeting. But the meeting generally ended in agreement on most of the items. There was one particular item, however, that Dr. Fishbein and I took issue with. And it is associated, the verbiage of that is as follows, quote, "A co-sponsor or affiliated user should coordinate with a similar type of recognized group for its efforts in running a camp or clinic. No other recognized group should engage an affiliated user or co-sponsor without the consent from the similar recognized group." Beneath that clause, in essence, was a conflict as to who would run the youth basketball program. The program had been run for several years by Ridgewood Hoops. Ridgewood Hoops relinquished for a period of time.
These are the off-season
Yeah.
programs.
Freedom.
Yep, these are they would run a program in the spring, and they would also run a program in the fall, and the hoops season is in the winter.
So
And is community schools running them off-season as well?
Just the off-season, not the
Thanks for that
winter.
clarification. I didn't
Yep.
think I realized that.
Yep.
Thanks.
So in essence, in the absence of that period of time, the community school, an individual
I didn't realize.
approaches community school to run the program underneath the umbrella of the community school. As you know, we've discussed, the community school has equal standing with Ridgewood Hoops with regards to the hierarchy of entities that have a claim on our facilities.
Where does Biddy fit in?
Same, hoops and biddy are the same.
But Biddy's in season, isn't it? Isn't that during the basketball season?
They do basketball in season.
Is Biddy only younger or it goes all the way?
Biddy goes through eighth.
It's right, okay.
So
What's the high school? Is that high school?
They don't have it. No. The
Well, that's
the high
not
school
true. Yes,
does
they
a
do.
biddy
They
during the winter.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
very
run by
competitive.
Run by the
Yes.
kids.
yeah, run by
Yes.
themselves.
Or
And they
something.
run it on their
No.
own. Or,
Yeah, I
there's
think they
something
have
my kids,
officials.
my kids used to
Yeah.
play.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
make their own teams or
yes,
something
Right,
like
right.
that.
Didn't want to stop.
I think you sign up and then
Yes.
you run,
There
then
you
you
play
pick your
high
team
school.
or
Yes.
whatever.
So they do.
Yeah.
It does go through high school.
Okay.
So in any case, in the course of the meeting, Jeff indicated that clause, his interpretation would mean that the community school.
Here's Jim.
Hello, we just started.
Hi, Jen.
Catch your breath.
Those stairs are brutal.
I was just giving a history, Jeff, of this particular clause. Okay. So in the course of the meeting, as we went over this clause, Jeff, who I will invite to speak to the board in a moment, indicated that his interpretation of that clause, the upshot of that would be that the youth basketball program would revert to hoops and no longer be run through the community school. In essence, in my view, this was an ex post facto application of this clause. Community school has run the program for 3 seconds now successfully, and is the incumbent for the program. Now, I mentioned that this would be discussed at the Board of Education to get our opinions. I also mentioned that I would ensure that Jeff's point of view was clearly stated, and I was prepared to do that. But since Jeff is with us, Jeff, I'd ask you to approach the microphone and just give us your opinion on this.
Hi, everybody.
Hey,
So my name's Jeff Gluck. I know some. I've been part of the Fields Committee for now, since inception, probably 10 years, maybe even more. And when we came across, and Vince was talking about hoops versus the community school versus anything else. And I really tried when I put this into perspective to take that out of it and look at the clause as a whole. So what we tried to do was, when we wrote this originally with Paul Sheridan, probably in 2007, 2006, it was a fields policy. It wasn't a gymnasium policy. We try to create a facility policy. And the whole idea is not to hurt anybody, but in the document, we have these recognized groups. So the Board of Ed and the village have come together or independently said, these are recognized groups. We have junior football, we have lacrosse, and they're all outlined. Hoops and biddy are recognized groups. So the whole idea where the whole was why should any recognized group, and community school is a recognized group, be able to offer a competing program to our children when we've empowered or trusted the recognized group to do that? And when I wrote this or edited it, it came up because of hoops and the community school, but it really is an overarching theme of what the policy, how the policy read. So today, lacrosse could say, if Teal's baseball, as an example, came in and wanted to run a program, they can go to lacrosse and say, would you sponsor us? And lacrosse could do it, as long as they had the field. But that's not the spirit of what we're trying to do. So I try to do it and put it into silos, and say, well, what's best for the community, right? We have this biddy program, we have this hoops program, we have the Ridgewood junior football program, we have the RSA Maroons, and we've recognized them as being the youth groups. They meet the criteria. The nonprofit, they have bylaws, they have all the gyration that's in the policy. So why should any one group start or do something without talking to the other group? So in that example, why wouldn't lacrosse approach the RBSA and say, hey, a group came to me and wants to do a baseball clinic. I have no problem if they're going to give me some money. I have the field use, so I don't really need it, or I can share it. And that was the spirit of it. So what's right for the community, not what's right for any one group. And my point was, and we got through, there's much more in this policy that we talked about than this one clause. I mean, it's.
We got almost everything. In fact, there were some things that were discussed that weren't even on your draft that we included in the revision. So this was the only sticking point.
Yeah, so we got through everything. So this was the last thing, and it wasn't to hurt anybody. But when you talk about where we are with the community school and biddy and hoops and the basketball program that was run, I've been doing this a long time, and I run an accounting firm in life, and I feel like my day is resolving disputes or getting people to talk, okay? And that's probably half the battle. And before this was even amended, my suggestion was, we got to sit around the table and talk. What's right for our community and what's right for the kids? So my suggestion was the basketball program that's being run, the community school, and hoops and biddy, sit around a table and talk about it. And that never happened. Why? Couldn't tell you. Okay, I don't want to give the theories of what people say. It doesn't matter. So what this tried to do was, if that happens, you got to sit around the table. before you can act. So before you can say to a group, yes, we'll sponsor your program, let's pause, talk to the group that's already there, that we've entrusted and is recognized, and say, what do you guys think? What do you gals think? Is it a good group? Are they for-profit? Are they nonprofit? What's the motivation? You know, there's plenty of groups who would love to use Ridgewood as a marquee name to run programs, okay? And the one thing that this policy was designed to do is really to prevent that. Because we don't want certain groups running programs in our town, okay? Or taking advantage of people where we have skilled people in the nonprofits that we've entrusted to run those programs. So that's what this clause is doing. So what it's, I mean, again, I don't know if you read it or you saw it, but a co-sponsor or an affiliate user should coordinate with a similar type recognized group for its efforts in running a camp or clinic. And then it says CG, where camps and clinics. No other recognized group should engage an affiliated user or co-sponsor without the consent from the similar type recognized group. So that's all it's saying, is that.
I've read that before you came, Jeff, and in fact, I circulated it among
Oh, great.
members over the last few weeks.
You know, and then one of the things that came up at our meeting was, well, what's the role of the community school? How does it interact? And there are plenty of athletic groups that are emerging that are not recognized groups. That the community school is a perfect viable alternative to running a program. I mean, one of the programs that's thriving right now in Ridgewood is rugby. Rugby's not a recognized group. If that group wanted to run a camp, community school, right, is the perfect vehicle to run that. If there's a volleyball program, community school, okay? All that was trying to do was to say that we have designated these 9 groups, as recognized groups within the village. And if you don't, if we don't go back and forth with that, what's the point of even having a recognized group? Because it's it could become the Wild West.
Got a question for you, Jeff.
Sure.
Your last sentence in your thing says, no other recognized group should engage in an affiliated user or co-sponsor without the consent of the similar Ridgewood group. Isn't that just a blocking? If they can't agree, what happens?
I think my opinion in that, it defers to the recognized group. Because again,
So you're saying recognized group also has a sport that they're recognized for, so they control that sports activity.
Yeah, because I think, and again, if they don't have bylaws, if they don't file their 501c3 5500, if they don't have a dispute policy, if they don't do all the things, they're no longer recognized groups.
But community schools is a recognized group on that list.
Yeah.
So Jeff, I've been on this committee for the last 5.5 years. I've gone to the meetings.
Mhm.
I have been filled with admiration and gratitude for the people on that committee. They give up their time and their efforts. They are committed to the youth sports program within Ridgewood. Focus is definitely on the kids. And I also recognize the need for stability, structure, continuity. I don't have an issue with any of that. What we're dealing here, though, is that because of a voluntary lapse on the part of Hoops, it came to the community school. It has been there now for 3 sessions. I believe you said in the meeting that the interpretation of this clause would mean it would be required to revert back to Hoops.
I think that it should have a conversation. It should be a co-sponsored, like one of my suggestions was, Biddy and Hoops with the community school brings this. And that way, Biddy and Hoops aren't hurt by it, okay? What happened was, right, and where it came from, and it wouldn't matter what it was, right? It just happened to be the Hoops guys. They claimed that their sessions were decimated, that they had 5 children sign up for their program when maybe they used to have 50 children sign up for that program. So they don't exist anymore. There's no point. Well, I'm just saying, in that theory, the programs that Hoops, and again, they took a season off, but why couldn't we all, like, again, how we get fees should not be relevant to what's best for our community. And if the people that run those programs, Hoops and Biddy, are the recognized group, then they should have a say on how our youth are trained and and hopefully in conjunction with the high school coach, if that's the case. Like, listen, my son plays football, okay? And he's gone through junior football. Now he's a junior in high school, going to be a junior in high school, but he played junior football from 3rd grade on. And then I coached that. I'm not affiliated with them in this vein, but I coached. The beauty of that was that program takes Coach Johnson's set and plays and concept of an offense and teaches it from 3rd grade. Coach Johnson's not on the field with them, except for 1 week of summer to run a camp. But he entrusted the community that was empowered to be part of that, the RJFA, to carry his philosophy. Now, my son played on the B team. Did we run every play that the A team ran? No. We incorporated things that would make us successful, but the concept and the framework was the same. So when my son stepped on the field as a freshman, he knew what he was doing. He wasn't lost. So what I'm saying is, Biddy and Hoop should have that same right to work with the high school coach and put together a structure and a program that continues through. And that's what is lacking in that one. It happens in lacrosse. It happens in football. RBSA works very closely, I know, on the softball side with the varsity softball program. I think as well in the baseball program. So it does happen.
Yeah, but doesn't Biddy and Hoops have that in season?
I don't think they have any interaction with my daughter played. There was no interaction that I know of. Maybe there is, and I don't know about it.
In season, during the winter season.
But it's also.
But no, I'm just saying, like you said that you guys run the high school offense and defense in the football.
It's a feeder program. You're feeding.
Oh, feeder. I thought you said theater.
Yeah. Feeder for youth sports into the high school level.
Right.
So what my confusion is, Ridgewood Hoops decided to take a breather for whatever reason. The community school, which I guess is the Irish Hoops, it's called.
Yes, Mike Troy.
Correct. So Mike Troy is the high school
Yes.
coach.
Mhm.
Okay, so I would think that his program is teaching the same thing to that junior level participant that he wants them to be using going forward into high school basketball. So, I mean, just to take your argument to that particular level in terms of feeding them into a program, I'm just confused about why he wouldn't be the perfect person to be teaching them that. And my children have participated in all of those things
Right.
that
But
we're discussing.
because what I would say, and it's no different than any other program that's run as a co-sponsored event group, that group could not be a recognized group under this field policy. So
But if it's through community school, then they are of the same level.
they're
aren't
a
they?
co-sponsor of an event. So what is the purpose of, so I guess the only purpose of having a Biddy or Hoops, and again, using basketball as the example, is that they just run a rec program and a travel program, and that's it. And where do they get the guidance from the future leader of these children. There is no interaction. Where all the other programs have the coach to guide them.
But it is, in fact, the
But
case
he is
that
the
community
coach.
school-
No. I'm saying is, to your point, when Ridgewood Hoops runs, and again, I don't know I think Biddy runs girls. I apologize, I don't know all the who runs what. But girls travels run by Biddy. When do they have, again, it's girls versus boys, it's a bad example maybe in what we're trying to talk about.
Girls travel, I don't think is run through Biddy.
Yeah,
The travel
hoops,
aspect of it?
hoops I think is boys.
Yeah,
And travel for
Yeah.
girls is Biddy.
Okay, so hoops, let's use hoop as an example.
Yeah.
Hoops is the boys travel.
Yeah.
Do they have any interaction with Coach Troy?
Or why wouldn't they? No.
I don't know, because he's not part of them. He's part of the community school.
But the
He does
community
not
school,
have to be part of them.
but the
Right.
community school is part of the school. It's part of the school board,
Mhm.
which means that when they're using facilities, they're using it on behalf of the school. I guess I'm sort of troubled by the fact that they don't have the same standing as a school, because it's pretty clear in the fields policy, anytime schools want to use a field or a gymnasium, they have the right to use that over anybody, other group.
They do, but this isn't a school program. This is a
School board-
private program.
Community school is part of the school
What's-
board,
What's for-profit? Community school
I
is a
believe Irish
for-profit.
Hoops is a for-profit organization.
but it's being.
Yeah, but we have all the people who work in the community school are for profit. They're
The community school is not.
right. So we have the community schools, district full-time employees are the director of the program and the secretary. Everyone else is subbed out, okay? And they're employees of the community school, of the district, underneath that. So everyone, whether it's the knitting person, or the person teaching a flute, or the person doing volleyball, they're all for-profit people trying to make money.
For themselves.
Salary.
But
Salary.
that's not the same.
I don't want to get off on this tangent.
But I
No,
guess-
but I'm just
so-
trying to explain to him.
No, and I understand that. So let me ask you a question, because that, I think what it really hinges.
Yeah, as you know, I've asked questions, look, if we're gonna go down this road of how it's structured and how much each of these people is making, I don't have any window into Hoops or Biddy or any of the other organizations, and I don't want that to be part of the conversation.
No, I agree. I know, I agree with you. All I'm saying is, let's say Hoops ran the program, never took a season off.
That'd probably be no issue, we probably wouldn't be sitting.
Right, so I think
But Hoops
that's
did.
where I think there's a disconnect of your own group.
But
if-
as I said, 5.5 years, it was never,
Right.
but it's the slightest
So then,
indication of this concept.
why didn't Hoops say, we're taking a breather for a little while, but we want to retain our status there?
Because I never thought, again, I can't speak for them, but from what they said around the table, they never envisioned that they wouldn't get their slot back. They're the recognized group.
So a recognized group, actually, if it takes a breather, should no longer be a recognized group.
That's up to you guys. You could make that decision.
We could, and that's probably what should have happened in this case.
Right, I
But in
mean,
this case, a recognized group dropped the ball, so to speak, to use a sports analogy, and said, we aren't going to run this program.
And someone
Community
else
school
filled it
stepped in
down.
and now has the history of having run it for a few years. They're the incumbent, so they really have the claim.
That's, shake your head, Jeff, but that's how I look at this as well. If I were to read this verbatim the way it is, I could come to the conclusion that the community school is the incumbent, and therefore nobody could sponsor anything unless I went through that, because no other recognized group should engage. The community school is on equal footing.
and that's
With
fine.
these other groups, they are now the incumbent, the program has been running successfully. I don't understand why we would revert simply because they changed the model.
So,
Can I just ask you one quick
Sure.
question? Is the bone of contention that the new group that came in through the community school did not approach or coordinate with Hoops, who was already there before they decided to launch that program? Is that where the bone of contention lies?
I think that's where the bone of contention lies with Hoops and Biddy, but you'd have to ask them. And why this, again, I don't represent a sports group. My role is I'm the village at large. I'm the at-large person for the village of Ridgewood, okay? I don't, according to my suggestion was to get around that table and talk it through.
Are you meeting with refusals on that?
I'm not involved in that. Again, I'm not.
Has anyone suggested to them?
Yes, there's been bone, right? I mean, Vince, you'd say, right? The people at that meeting contended they offered to have a meeting and it was declined.
On what?
No, well,
Or it just never happened.
the board and Hoops have had many discussions on this, many.
What
The-
board? Our board?
Our board, me,
And Hoops?
me, yes.
So what I had said to Vince is, again, this is suggested language. And this is what I came up with to be what I would call Switzerland, okay? To make a peace offering to get this done. Because I think it's written poorly, or it was not written in the best language. So
Your first sentence, though, is the one you're saying they should have. It says co-sponsor affiliate group should coordinate with similar type group. And that's what you're saying they should sit around the table. The second sentence, though, gives a group a black ball on the other group if they don't reach agreement. So I guess your first sentence doesn't trouble me as much as the second sentence.
So, and Jim, what I said to Vince was, I need you guys to come up with language that the board wants. Because it's your policy, right? At the end of the day, I'm just trying to facilitate what I think is a better policy than what we had.
In case I haven't made it clear, I appreciate what you.
No.
You've taken your own time and effort to go through several iterations of this, listening to a lot of
Falls into the
nasty
new good deed goes
conversation.
unpunished.
And that's okay.
He's even complimentary in private.
Right. No, and I'm okay. And like I said, I just couldn't come up with better wording. Okay. And at the end of the day, I know that the trail to success, right? We have two paths, two groups at the end of the day have to approve it. Okay. I think, I can't speak for the village, but it goes to Parks and Rec next and then to the village. And in your case, it just goes straight to you. So I didn't think it was worth taking a vote at the fields level, knowing that Vince had an issue, because it would be silly. It would pass. In my opinion, it would pass at the fields level, and then it wouldn't pass here. So that's when I said I think I need you all to come up with language that you would want. Again, because in the spirit, I think you understand the spirit of what I'm trying to do, or what we're trying to do. I don't think it's me. I mean,
I appreciate that. I would suggest that we could have suggested language.
and that would be.
With suggested language. Does everybody agree with that? This is, by the way, a discussion. This is not taking a vote.
Yeah, no. And that, what I had said to Vince was that when the fields meeting broke up last time, I said, I really think you have to sit around the table with the board, because everything else we basically said, hey, this seems equitable and is in the right spirit of what we're trying to do. This one clause is, and I understand. I mean, I understand what your issue is. And I sympathize with everybody, right? Because, you know, in this case, the basketball programs have been around a long time, right? Community school has been around a long time. So I understand where they are. And you can't come up with something that everybody's going to be a winner at, or be successful, or come away from the table thinking they received what they're entitled to or what they wanted. But this was my best shot in my writing to come up with a solution to something that really was absent. And what this does is it closes a hole that the policy has today. In today's language, any group in Ridgewood that is a recognized group could sponsor another group, whether we want it or not.
You're asking something which actually Vince is going to shoot me for asking this question, but
I'm sorry, say again?
Vince is going to shoot me for asking this question. But let's say lacrosse gets, I don't even know if this organization exists, USA Lacrosse Incorporated comes in and says, we want to run your lacrosse program for you, and we'll give you as a group $100,000 contribution. What they're coming in to use is the village, the assets of the village, meaning the fields and the kids in the village. Should they have the right to do that?
Who has the right?
The Lacrosse Association, Ridgewood Lacrosse.
No, USA Lacrosse.
No, there's
Now,
the
another
regular,
different
there's our
group.
affiliated, there's the
I think
affiliated group.
If it's within there, so right now, I don't know when it is, but Red Bulls is running the camp for Maroons. I have no idea why they picked Red Bulls. I don't know.
So presumably there's a contribution involved. Should that affiliated group, which is what they're defined as here, be able to profit from the use of the fields and the kids?
Well, they don't. They're a nonprofit.
Well,
and
yeah,
hopefully
but
they use
profit, I
that.
mean-
Hopefully they turn that money back to the
All right,
community.
so they get a
supposed
$100,000
to.
contribution, but they're nonprofit. But should they be able to do that, or should it be going to the village and to the Board of Education, which owns the facilities and is the one
They
that's
pay
really
rent.
affecting kids?
Right? In the policy, they pay rent. It's all outlined. So, right, whether the rent prices are right or wrong, that's what's outlined today. They use the stadium field.
This is getting.
Yeah, no, I don't know. And I don't want to, but right now,
Whenever you say not-for-profit. You know, Jeff, as does everybody, people running not-for-profit companies can make a lot of money. Okay?
And they can.
So when you say not-for-profit, that doesn't include asking, wait a minute, what is the financial arrangement? Who's collecting the revenues? Who's paying the bills? Are there financial statements available on all of these things? So when you say not-for-profit, to me, it's not exculpatory.
Yeah.
Okay, I thank you, Jeff, for sharing your concerns. It is hard for me to separate out the real issue underlying this, which is hoops versus community schools. And I do have concerns about that second sentence, where one group would have the ability to say absolutely not. And only because as I come down to it, my goal always is, how can we provide enough opportunities for kids to participate in various activities. So I do appreciate your thoughts in terms of the board should go back and look at this and look at that wording. I know two of us at least have expressed some concerns about that second sentence. I understand your concern about not duplicating, and yet I have experienced through my children, both Biddy and hoops, good experiences, and also know the value of the community schools. And when we are working with children, many of our community schools programs are through our staff. Our music programs is through our staff providing it. So we need to noodle this a little bit, I think, and better understand maybe and get some more guidance from Dan.
I agree with that. When is our next schools committee meeting? Is
I
there
think
one
in September.
scheduled?
I would believe, yeah, it's probably right after Labor Day.
Okay, so what we can do as a group is, working with Dr. Fishbein, we can come up with suggested languages for this will satisfy our concerns, and put it really clearly. Our concern is, I was uncomfortable that somebody could interpret this, which people did, to say this takes this program out of the community school and puts it back under hoops as well for this clause, when community school has now established itself, the 3 series running this program very well. And I don't really feel.
Why can there not be a competing parallel program? I don't understand that.
Kick enough kids, I think, probably.
It wouldn't,
Yeah.
we're not, I mean, I think under the field policy, X% of the students or the children have to be
From Ridgewood.
Ridgewood residents.
It's like
You
90%, I think.
you wouldn't get the required number.
And would there be an
And I
issue
think
with
that-
court time? Would
I'm
there be an
sorry.
issue with court time as well?
Yeah, and in talking, it was voiced at the Fields Committee that the facilities to run these type programs, to be A programs and top-notch programs, there's only certain gym space that's available within our schools that really would be accommodating to these programs. I mean, that's the way they put
Has
it.
there ever been an overload of kids in these programs? Has that ever turned anybody away because there are too many?
No, what happens is that just individual teams will get less gym time. The more teams they build, so some of the travel programs, they used to have 1 team, and now they could have 3 teams. So that just means those 3 teams get equal access to the fields. It just means the individual teams get less time on the field.
Would I be correct, Dan, in that the hoops is more selective and may turn away kids?
Hoops during the season is selective,
Okay.
and so is
Yeah.
biddy travel.
You get
Um,
cut.
The travel
During
times are- yeah.
the off-season, I don't know how it worked.
But community schools,
Program is not selective.
right, and that's running off season.
Okay, so we will take this under consideration. Let's say we'll come up with suggested language. What I do believe, and I'll ask my fellow board members on it, I would feel uncomfortable with a decision that would take this program away from the community school now, simply because it used to be run in hoops. I say that because community school has an equal stature in terms of the hierarchy with hoops, because the coach happens to be the high school basketball coach, which in your discussion, you mentioned the benefit that inures to us as a result of that. I don't feel it's right to take this away from the community school, given the circumstances that exist right now. So, and my concern was that people interpreted this to say that's what we would do. So we will work to revise this language. But does anybody feel any differently about that? Does anybody?
No.
Okay.
That's fine. Yeah, no, that's what I hope would happen, honestly,
Mhm.
to, you try and put in what you think is in the spirit of what the agreement should be. And differing of opinions, listen, no different, I would say the same thing. The issue is, and just so you're all aware, is that under the current policy, hoops and biddy are not members of the field committee. So they don't have a say in this, in all fairness. They're a recognized group, but they're not a member of the committee, which is one of the maybe flaws in
Are they
the,
the only recognized group that doesn't have a member?
no, there's others.
Right, well,
Uh,
because this was a field
Right.
committee.
It was a fields committee, not a facilities
Right.
committee.
And then
Facilities.
over time, gyms got into it. So
Right.
this was to set up, I wasn't here, but I'm told there were conflicts in field use. So this
That's why the
committee
field
was set
committee
up
was set up.
to mediate that and to
And the,
disperse the gym time.
and the
the
gym
field
time was always something that just the business administrator and whoever was the person for basketball or people for basketball, divided up the time. So it is an interesting quandary as to whether in fact it even belongs as a discussion among the field committee, but now it's, it's here.
Yeah, and the other side of it is, right, is that most spring sports use the gyms
Yes,
to get ready for spring sports because of the weather and the field conditions and whatnot.
right.
So they are overlapping even
Right.
more.
And
So-
you fixed that in your draft.
Yeah.
Well,
Great.
I would say, Sheila, to your point, the primary role of the Fields Committee is allocating the fields and scheduling.
And field maintenance. I mean, that was,
Right.
it was use, maintenance.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the creation of it. And I got to know many of you from that.
And I sometimes think that Ed Seaver should be enshrined.
Yeah.
Because he does this himself.
His Excel
With a lot of
spreadsheet.
time and effort. He really cares. So I just get all that.
So, yeah, I mean, again, this is not going to be a document that ends all and solves everything, right? All that really was Tim Cronin and I who sat together, maybe no different than we did 10 years ago to draft it, was just trying to close loops that were there. And, give recognition to groups as we are now creating gymnasiums and indoor facilities into the policy. And again, the policy's come a long way. What was amended, I guess, back in December, where we talked about being a 501c3, having bylaws, disputes. None of that was in the original policy either, but as the years evolved, those were things that we realized that should be in there. And where the policy was amended. And the master plan was very different 10 years ago, 11 years ago. We thought there would be more fields, quite honestly, today than we have. So, and we're only growing as a sports community. And, I never, 11 years ago, when I joined this thing, my kids were little. And now I'm seeing them in the high school. I still have the same passion and I don't really have any affiliation or limited with youth sports, but it's still the same thing. It's for the kids. And that's what should be foremost and the most important thing is how do we position our kids to be, not even the best they can be, the best kids they can be,
Absolutely.
Don't disagree on that.
But
Well,
do thank you for all your time.
Thank you so much. Again, I wanted to make sure that the point you got across.
Yeah.
Nobody better to do that than you.
No, I appreciate that.
So thank you.
I do. And I'm glad I can make it and thank you for being patient with the schedule.
No
All
problem.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
So at this time, Jen, you need to do the acceptance of the minutes.
Oh, are just the policies?
There's policies, first reading, first discussion.
I didn't see anything, but I suspect you.
We've discussed them, and we can now move on to the first reading at the next meeting.
Just not too long ago, sometime in the spring, you did send the Strauss has made little notes about changes, and I found very helpful.
Yeah, we'll do
I
that.
understand.
We'll put that in for
but
the next
That would
round.
be great.
Yep.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
I mean,
makes-
I
it
see
helps
that
a
it
lot.
does help. I do see where you,
No,
but then it's nice to read the rationale.
Right.
And a lot of it is, now we have new standards,
Mhm.
a new name for the
Right, and
standards.
change this back to that.
that's-
And there was one policy which we decided we kind of deferred on, which is
Sustainability.
sustainability, which we need to talk to you about, Dan, to better understand whether or not
Okay.
we need it. But,
Mhm.
so that's kind of on our to-do list.
So thanks for that.
Okay. Anybody else have any discussion on this?
No?
Okay, now let's move on to the acceptance.
I have a question.
Oh,
I didn't raise the question in advance, which I probably should have. But at the end of the last, we did the whole bit on dyslexia training and stuff. I kind of summed up what we did at the end. And I didn't actually see that being caught in the minutes, the summing I did, which was caught by the newspaper, and they captured a lot of what I said. What I was looking for, and I was wondering if we might add to the minutes the summation, which was essentially that Ridgewood is very much aware of dyslexia issues. We are very sensitive to it, and we have gone out of our way to do more than the state requirements. We are expending a significant amount of people and time and effort to get 21 people trained. So I just wanted to capture that in the minute. I have no wording to suggest, and I would ask you to just take a look at the tape and see if you could add something. So from that, I would ask, I guess, that we could defer accepting those minutes until we added something in that. Unless there's any reason why we have to do it. I apologize for not giving this before tonight, but I looked at it this morning and realized it.
Next meeting in August. Okay, Jen, you gonna take that on?
I'm gonna put it in, but I thought I had it in there, so I must have.
Yeah, it just, I didn't see all that.
I'll put it back in there.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, if there's no further business, I hereby move that this meeting of the Ridgewood Board of Education be adjourned. Do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? So be it.